Hello, and welcome to Get That Job. This is a monthly program that's focused on helping job seekers learn best practices for job search and career management, and also to hear from the experts about what not to do on the rare occasions you might make a mistake. We want to help you avoid them so you can find the job that you love. Tonight, our program is focusing on interviewing and how to really ace that interview. I'm Sue Connelly, and I'm the founder of kitlist.org, which is a free job opportunity email list of 70,000 of my closest friends. and I'm actually privileged to bring two people with us tonight. Randy Block, who is a career coach, also has a long-term business as a recruiter, and he's been a vice president of a recruitment firm in San Francisco. And he's very well accredited now in the very important area of coaching and career management and transition.
Thank you.
So Randy, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
And Kevin Delaney is HR director at VMware, and he also has another extraordinary history. He's come from a company I really enjoy called Tell Me, voice recognition system, which has now been acquired by Microsoft or a while back. And actually, back in your history, you also work with A&E TV. So I love the program, and I'm sure we've got some great stories to share.
Of course. Yes, good to be here.
So thanks for coming tonight. Sure. And really what we're trying to do is, I hear so many people who are asking me questions about what are some things you need to do? How do you prepare for an interview? What do you wear? What do you say? What happens if you feel like you're blowing it, and how do you save it? So we're just going to ask a few little questions, and this is just a talk among friends. But I actually think that Randy has something fun on his site, and you had an article you wrote called, a little humorously, but How to Blow an Interview. So Randy, why don't you start first, and we'll talk about what are some of the classic mistakes people are making that they may not even realize that they're doing.
Well, actually the number one is what we call TMI, too much information. Many times I had sat interviewing someone and they would actually have answered the question, but they keep going and they keep going. And yeah. I send them all kinds of body language, so that's
like
one. Yeah, like this, please stop that. Yeah. It's terrible. And the second thing is appearing a little bit too desperate. You know, that I really need this job right now, and their body languages are coming over to the table.
Almost for the core.
Yeah, and that's a turn off as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have a couple?
Yeah, I would echo what you said at the beginning to mirror what the other person is doing. People send body language all the time.
They do.
And so often the interviewer knows the window is short. They would like to get that answer and many more. And when they sort of start looking at their notes and turning and fidgeting in their chair, and you continue to ramble, your window is shrinking because you're not reading my cues, which means can you read the cues of the business?
Exactly.
So the TMI goes further to, if that's a high energy person you're talking to, you should probably have some energy. And if it's a low energy person, you probably don't want to scare them by, all right, let's go, this is fabulous. So you have to kind of match what the other person's doing as well.
That's actually really important to know. And also, I think a lot of people don't come in prepared. Mm-hmm. What are some good things to do to get prepared for an interview in terms of research or even knowing what to wear, things like that?
I think there's two parts of preparedness. There's one, you should know your own company very well. Oftentimes I will ask a candidate, tell me what you know about the business you're in. If you don't know your current
That's
business,
a new one. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to know mine. And secondly, you should be very familiar with my company, what we do, what we're great at, and how you're going to make a difference in that. So I think both of those are very key to say, you took this seriously, versus, well, I applied to 10 jobs. Which one is this? I don't want to be one on the menu. I want to be the selection.
Good point.
I've got something to add to that too, and besides the research, but with the clients that I'm working with in terms of preparing, for them to prepare, we always ask for the job description in advance. And on the other side of the ledger, of course, is the qualities of the job. And so there's the must-haves and you must have this particular quality, and then the second one is preferred. What I call the preferred. Sure. And so I have them grade themselves on a scale from 1 to 10 on all the required.
These are people you're coaching, not people you're interviewing for a job, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The people. Thanks for clarifying that. But the idea is that they are really, really aware of what the pitfall, where they might be short and where they're strong, and of course to have a story that illustrates each of the parts of the job description that they want to that they're applying for. The main thing is that they're confident. You know, the whole idea is they're confident, so they evaluate themselves beforehand in a very honest way, and don't kid yourself. Because if you're short, you're short. That's it.
Well, and I think that touches on a point about being authentic. And I think everyone is nervous in an interview, and I think turning that energy into something positive, and also realizing that the person that you're talking to isn't necessarily being their complete self either, because I think people put on a hat of an interviewer. Like, what do you do when you've got kind of a green interviewer and you realize that you're kind of on the spot and you'd like to kind of get the interview back on track? Maybe it's kind of going a little south on you. What are some tips for that?
Well, I would touch on something Randy said. I think it's really important to be very direct on what you know and what you don't know. We often believe we need to present that I know everything you're asking. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Expect the question 1 or 2 deep. So if I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at Excel? I'm really good. I'm an 8. And then I say, tell me what you can do in Excel. And you say, well, I can sum columns and I can give you a total. You just ruled yourself out. If you don't know it, tell me you don't know it. And be prepared to describe exactly how well you know it, because if I find that you're fluffing your answers, you're losing credibility by the second.
That brings up a good point, because you and I had a discussion earlier about questions that you kind of ask people, and sometimes it's not necessarily the answer, but how they're arriving at it.
Sure.
So when you get kind of a tough question, and it's coming your way, and suddenly you're blanking, what do you tell someone to do?
I think there's always a moment to regroup. So I would say first stop and think. Don't believe you have to open your mouth and begin rambling through,
right,
or you've dug yourself a hole you can't get out of. Gather your thoughts, begin to answer. If you truly get stuck, ask for, hold on, you know what? This is what I would change if I had to redo that again. It's always okay to come back and correct yourself, as in life and as in your job. Recognize your error and correct it, and tell people with new information, I might do it differently. And so if you need to buy some time, ask a qualifying question. When you ask that, is it this or this that you're looking for? And that gives you a chance to think.
Well, it's also being very present in the moment. I love authenticity in that moment. I don't understand what you're saying to me. Or I don't understand the question, please clarify. I mean, that makes it real. Obviously, if you have to say please clarify to every question, it's probably not a fit. But,
Sure.
but the reality is that who is this person? And we're looking for a fit, and this is something he and I can kick around for a bit. But it really is about the fit, and I believe that there's no such thing as a right answer. That the right answer is only a myth. It's it's all about delivery, and how you deal with it in the situation, not that you got it wrong. And people think that this is like an oral exam, and it's not.
Well, and also I think Kevin was saying what you're interested in is how someone thinks. How do you arrive at it? And I think that's actually, because you said if you're trying to go for someone who's an engineer versus a finance person versus a marketing person, you'll expect kind of a different thought process for each. That'll let you know, like, oh yeah, this is this person's sweet spot, and that's where they fit. So, but speaking of fit, I think we're talking about originally what a company's looking for is if you're fit with them, what are the criteria that you might not expect or parts of that fit?
I think fit is probably the most important piece of finding your job. We hire very smart, talented people, and not all of them are successful. And so you have to ask the question, why is it that people who have been successful somewhere else are not successful here? It's because of fit. And I would really challenge candidates. Too often they're so intent on getting the job, they themselves are not doing the due diligence to make sure, will I be happy here?
True.
Do I like this manager? Do I like this place? Do I like what we do? Do I like the products? Because if you're just trying to clear the hurdle to, quote, get the job, and you have to show up in misery for the next however long you can endure, it's not serving you or the company well. So that, I think, is a key piece. Make sure you're really interested.
And I want to play off of that, too, and that is that I thought we'd be disagreeing more, but anyway.
Or you can, just don't fight. So.
No, the thing is that the focus, the top priority of any candidate is to focus on the fit, not to get the offer. That's key, because what I like afterwards, if they get rejected, it's because the fit wasn't there. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with the company. The third component is the fit wasn't there. They can rebound quicker and go on to the next interview. They don't feel like, what did I do wrong?
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's really, and it's incumbent upon the candidate, which is what I coach my job search clients, they have to connect the dots. It's up to them to say, you have this need, I have this strength. And I rely on them to connect, not necessarily the interviewer.
I would add, there's a piece of that that's interesting, because oftentimes we sit passively as the person being interviewed. You ask me a question. One, don't be afraid to say, did I answer your question? Do you understand?
Really
is that what you're looking for? But the other piece is, it's often the case the person interviewing is bad. They don't know how to interview. They don't know the right questions. So if you feel you're not actually getting to talk about really what strengths you have and what you have to offer, you need to help redefine the question to make sure that you're answering the question they want to ask but maybe are not very good at asking. So I think there's a piece, you can't just be passive and say, well, they asked me really bad questions and so I answered them, but I don't think the interview went very well.
It's your career here, and that's what's at stake.
Exactly.
So, well, I think one of the things that came as a point is, be prepared with questions. You are also interviewing the company. You want to see it's a mutual fit that you're looking at as well. And both of you each mentioned about being prepared with a story. But how long should that story be, and how many stories do you need to have? And what would be an example? Is it always focused on successes or solving a problem?
It's the whole key to interviewing, in my view, is relevancy. It's the candidate's job to make everything relevant. In other words, their background, what's relevant to, say, the needs of Kevin, okay? And the fact of the matter is that if they're not doing that, okay, they're just answering the question, they have no idea how the interview went. They really don't, because there was no connection.
Yeah.
They didn't make any effort to make it relevant.
There's one point you mentioned earlier, and I want to get back to it. Just because you didn't get the job doesn't mean you're rejected. And I think you had a point that we had in our talk last week was, just because you didn't get that particular job doesn't mean that there might not be another opportunity inside the company for which you're a better fit, or even someone that person might know how to connect you with. So let's talk about, I think that I think we're so quick to go like, okay, that didn't go well, check, on to the next one. But by the time you got into an interview, it's like, God bless you, you made it. You made it through the thousands of other people that applied. What do you do to make the most of that interview, to make a connection so that even if you're not a fit, that person's somewhat invested enough to say, Randy, you're not a fit for this one, but I know something here.
They may not volunteer it, though. My clients, again, I say, like if it's going south, and sometimes you can figure that out.
Sure.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. You spend 45 minutes with somebody, and it's kind of like, ask the candidate, it's not what they're saying. You can actually eliminate yourself and say, it just doesn't feel like it's a great fit. Is there anybody else in the company? This is the candidate speaking, right? Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else in the company that I should be talking to where it might be a better fit? And get that involved. And of course, you're playing on the hiring manager's guilt because there was just a rejection. And you may laugh at that, but there's some psychology there. I really want to help this person. And if there's nothing within the company, you'd say, is there anybody in your network outside the company that I should be talking to? And so you may leave there, and your spouse says, well, did you get the job? No, but I got 3 great leads. Not a bad afternoon, really.
It's interesting. When I think from an internal perspective, sometimes that's very challenging. You are in your world of this is what I need. Mm-hmm. And so always ask. I don't think it can hurt. When I think if somebody asks me, though, specifically, what is it that's going to maximize my 30 minutes, my 42 minutes with this one person? You'd said something earlier about questions. I have a perspective, you have to ask questions as the person being interviewed. Mm-hmm. If I ask you, do you have any questions for me? And you say, no, you just missed a huge opportunity. Yeah. And sometimes you'll be as naive to say, I've asked all my questions of others, so no, I don't. What you just told me is, so you thought they were worthy of asking questions and I'm not important enough in your world to ask me. Mm-hmm. Don't miss it. Ask me the same questions you ask them. It lets you validate whether or not you're getting the same answers. It also tells me, and what I'm looking for as an interviewer, are your questions any good? If you ask me about whether or not Coke is free, you're missing an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Tell me what it's going to be like to work for this boss. Tell me what will be the most challenging piece of this job if I get it. Show me that you have insight into, will I fit here, which I think is what you're trying to get at.
And one more question I would throw in too, Kevin, and that is that towards the end of the interview, someone said, do you have a question for me? And if it hasn't really been addressed, and a lot of times it isn't, tell me what success looks like in this position at the 6th month. Because that can turn into kind of a business meeting, and the 30 minutes can go to an hour.
Sure.
Because now you're talking, look, I'm here, you've got a need, I'm here to see if I can help you, fill that need.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that need doesn't show up on the job description either. I think everyone is cranking out when there are a lot of jobs, a lot of things are kind of lifted from other job descriptions. And sometimes you can really uncover a sweet spot that really no one else has identified, because usually the hiring manager is saying, I just need a marketing person, and then the HR person is trying to extract what they need. But I think if you can kind of find something that makes you unique, and you say, oh, well, by the way, actually, that's something that I did do at X company, and this is what happened, then that gives you an advantage. But going back to, I always think it goes to the personal connection, because we're in these roles, but we're really human beings. And in some cases, you're talking to someone who might be in HR, they might be a sourcing person for another, on working on behalf of the company, or it might be a peer or someone you'd be reporting to, or someone who report to you. But the net is, we're human beings. So I think it's always a good idea, check out LinkedIn, find out if there's any point of commonality. Sure. You might have gone to the same school. You went to Cornell. I didn't. We don't have anything more to talk about. But there are other things. Well, no, but you just look and you think where kids go to school, or just where you look and you're making these multi-threaded connections. Yeah. And I think what it's doing is showing respect for the person, that you care enough to know them beyond that they're just a means to an end, that you're saying, look, and when you're working at a company, I think that you can actually get past not having all the skill sets if the personality fit and the culture fit and the passion for the job and what you bring to it. In fact, Kevin, you mentioned someone who made a transition from one role to another, surely on the tenacity. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, you bring up an important part on job descriptions. First of all, they're all wrong. Yeah. We don't get accurate ones. If you don't feel you have every criteria met, don't rule yourself out. Mm-hmm. The simple fact is that's a laundry list. Mm-hmm. Prove to me you're successful. We had somebody that was really in an administrative position, wanted to make the transition into quality assurance, and had participated in bug nights, and we interviewed. And so I wanted to know if there was tenacity. And so I took a different approach. I asked brain teasers and set a stage. You walk into a room, Fred and Martha are lying dead on the floor amidst broken glass and water. You can ask me any yes or no question. Go. She was unrelenting in her questions, never faltered. Some of them were random, but she took note, and she was very detailed and processed and relenting. And that feedback said, you know what, it's worth a shot at an entry level to say, is this person going to go after it with tenacity? And so when you're coming out of an interview, you asked, will you be open to other jobs? If you show me fundamental raw skills, you have great tenacity, you have great communication skills, you're willing to do what it takes, those things stick with me. Don't tell me your responsibilities were the following list of things.
All right.
So,
and in addition to that, if they're being authentic, I keep going back to that,
sure.
Being authentic, and you really feel it. I mean, it's coming from not just from here.
Sure.
Which I say there's no right and wrong answer in an interview, but what I mean is it's coming from in
sometimes
here.
There's a wrong answer. If it's a technical question and you blow it,
I
don't think you have the skills.
Technical, I get it. But
yes. You said something about stories earlier.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
when
stories.
I think about preparing, if I was telling a candidate I had the 42-second prep, and they said, how do I do my best? I would say pick 5 stories of your career that demonstrate success, and be prepared on a menu to answer those with whatever questions you ask me. So if it's tell me about a time you were very successful, I use story 1. Now the rule is once you've used story 1, you don't get to use story 1 again. Sometimes the candidate gets asked a second question and they tell me the same story, and then a third question, well, that was a really big project, so I'll tell you about it again. Pick your 5 stories and give me a greatest challenge, I'm going to use that story. The same story could be used for greatest accomplishment, a time when you've overcome adversity, a time when you've demonstrated tenacity. So pick your 5 well and vet them with somebody that says, does this impress you? If it doesn't, pick a new story.
You know, you bring up a really good point. I found on the earlier, I have a little note here about a little eyeball on here to remind me not to keep blinking when I'm talking. And I think that seeing yourself on video, which is really easy to do on camera phones now, doing role playing on interviews with a friend, sometimes even listening to your voicemail message when you're leaving a message for someone, hearing the ums and uhs. But I think practice does make perfect, and it also makes you more relaxed because you're less concerned about the mechanics and you get down to the real nucleus of it. But what are some other things people can do to kind of get ready for getting into interview mode if someone is brand new to it, kind of new to their career, or someone who's senior who might not have had to interview in a while?
Okay.
Sorry.
I have lots.
Well, I think part of it is define who you are, what your strengths are, what you really enjoy, because that's what you want to make relevant to in the interview process. Right. Because what I found is the thousands of people I've interviewed over 30 years in recruiting, and there've been a lot of them. The people that impressed me were not only enthusiastic about my job, but they were enthusiastic about themselves. And that's huge. Things are bought and not sold in the interview. You don't have to sell anything in an interview. You have to have conviction that what you're doing, what you did, matters. So I go over, there's a lot of prep work that, as long as, again, the achievements are relevant to something that the company can use, you know.
We talk a lot about the subtleties, and they're important, but never has somebody gotten a job because they had good posture, they put on the right clothes, and they had a nice note at the end.
Yes.
Those are just additionals. I've had some strange people that have gotten the job because they had the skills and they demonstrated they could be successful doing what we want. So those are subtleties. Focus on how you tell your story. Yeah. This is what I do. This is what I do well. This is how it will serve your company. And I'm a little weird and I dress strange, and the company will overcome those things if, in fact, you can do the job better than everybody else they talk to. So explore. Can you sell your story?
And the key word with Kevin, we just said, was how you deliver the answer. I can't emphasize that enough.
Authenticity.
You bet.
Well, you know, I think another thing too, I think people are afraid of those killer questions that come by and you're thinking like, oh, here it's coming. So some of them are the illegal or inappropriate question. How do you field that without going like, you bloomin' idiot? Do you know you just violated 10 laws in this state? How do you handle a tough question like that? And then I'll ask you later on about how do you deal with the question of money.
Can I
absolutely
take the first one?
Go for it.
I have 3 responses that I recommend to my clients. They have 3 choices actually. The first one is you call the interview on it. You ask an illegal question. The second way is to say something like.
So you really put them on the spot then.
Well, no. You know, I'm not suggesting that they do it. Well, here are all the 3. So you ignore it. Just keep on trucking. You just, well, okay, I'm married with children, okay. But the third one that I recommend that my clients use is, can you tell me, I'll be happy to answer the question, can you tell me how it relates to the successful performance of the job? Which kind of does put it back at them, but it kind of puts it in a neutral, just tell me how it works.
Or can we get back to that later?
Yeah.
Well, and actually, Kevin, you had a really good point about how to handle the salary thing, because we've always been told to evade it. And but you had a really good take on that.
Yeah, when I've been a recruiter, my job is to make sure I put people in front of the company that we can hire. And I just believe that a recruiter's job is to understand the full picture, and I can't sell you as to whether or not you are fit for the job unless I know your salary fits in the range. So I think you need to be prepared to answer it. You can either say, this is what I currently make, and I expect to make more, or I believe my fair market value is X. But if you will not commit a range, the recruiter knows that the company has a budget, and if they can't match it, they're going to be reluctant to put you in front of a manager or team in case they fall in love with you, only to find out that I, the recruiter, can't close the deal, and I have failed in getting you somebody you love. So be prepared to answer it either, what you want, what you believe you're worth, or what you make. But I think that moves the conversation forward.
Great. Randy, how about you?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, our first disagreement, of course, because I was on that side of the desk. I needed, but of course I was an external, which meant all the bets were off, right?
Sure.
But what I suggest to my clients, usually in the phone interview, this is what comes up. There's, okay, Dada, you really can't evaluate soft skills and all of that on the phone. Do they have the hard skills? And by the way, how much are you making if they're employed? How much were you making if they're unemployed? Or how much are you looking for? So I give my clients 3 suggestions, okay? The first one is to come back and do the Richard Nixon response, which is answer the question with another question. So you come back with, so what's the pay range of the position? About half the time, except for an old salt like this, but about half the time they'll tell you. Okay? Now let's just say that the person says, no, I need a number from you. Okay? Then you'd say, well, I'm sure that if this is a great fit, because you've got the job description, I've got my resume, and I've got both of them. We're in the ballpark here. This is no big deal. I'm also unemployed and I'm not making anything, right? In essence, you would say that I'm sure that we can negotiate a really mutually beneficial compensation arrangement. Right. Now, if they ask a third time, which means you've said no twice, I'm not answering the question. Well, the third time starts the bad feelings. Of course, with him, it might start it too. So you've got to give him a number. And the number that I recommend my clients give is the minimum base salary that I would consider is X. The minimum base salary that I would consider. And if it's way over what he can afford, then it's all over.
But does that set you to that minimum, though? Are you
No,
kinda
not at
locked
all.
in? So from your perspective,
you
are
have to hear the
locked in?
words. You have to hear the words.
I agree with him in that
I would
respect.
consider.
Okay.
That I would consider.
Right.
And so, like, you might want to jump to that, but what I'm suggesting is a lot of times, maybe not a
Sure. It can be a range. It could be, this is what I expect. But there is a moment, I think, to that point. You have to read the recruiter. If it's sort of like, look, you're not playing ball and you won't tell me whether we're in play or not, I'll write you off and talk to the next 10 candidates who will tell me
Right.
what they fit and whether they have the skills. And so I think it is subtle. I love the approach of come to the third answer. You can defer and try the first one, but a recruiter, if they're doing their job, needs to know whether or not they can put you in front of them
Exactly.
with a sell.
Well, I think
close.
these are good points, but also is there something that's good at the end of the interview to help kind of bring it on an uptick, get kind of a good close, maybe kind of pre-selling yourself? What are some good ways to kind of wrap up an interview and to kind of leave it on a positive note that's going to lead to the job?
Give them a nice bottle of wine. Say, I'm bribing you. No,
Shamelessly.
actually, what Mike, if the candidate is really confident that they can do the job, they'll say, I'm very very confident that I'd be successful in this position. Do you have any concerns? There's only three concerns they can give you. Or three answers they can give you. I'm sorry. Yes, I have concerns. No, I don't have any concerns. I need to interview more people. And we have. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but we have responses to each one of those. Because if it's gone south, and another leading question is, what's next? Okay, and what are next steps? And the person says, well, I'm going to be. I have to interview more people, and you say, well, how long will that take? And then the candidate will say, we'll pick the next business day. Let's say, let's set a short 5-minute touch-base telephone appointment.
Right.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is they're busy.
Yeah.
If you had a choice, yes, do what you can, but the opening is more important than the closing.
Exactly.
I'm fresh.
Okay.
I want to know right out of the blocks, you impress me, we're in the game, or we're going downhill. If you've lost me by then, I don't care how you close it, we've gone downhill.
That's true.
Open it, practice
There
your
you go.
opening strong.
So I think practice is an important thing. Preparation,
Rehearsal.
very, very important. And bring your questions, have your story. And I think what we did tonight, I think we had some fun. You look at it and say, do your homework and then just let it flow. And if something goes awry, so what? You can save it and get the job anyway. So thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
pleasure.
You're highly informative. And we hope that this helped all of you. And if you take just 2 points, do it. And make sure you do something differently and practice. Take care, and we'll see you again next month.